Well, it's great to see you.
Hi, Sophia.
Hi, we have quite a few participants today,
Cool.
and we could start anytime you wish.
Okay,
And
let me then turn off this fan. So I can share my screen here, right?
okay, I'm going to make you a presenter.
Okay.
And as we agreed, the participants could type their questions into text in the chat, and you can answer after the talk. So
Okay.
I'm going to make you a presenter right now.
Okay. The voice is clear?
Pardon?
Is my voice clear?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I'll start.
All right. I still cannot share my screen.
Okay.
Okay. Now I can. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes. Yes, we can.
All right. So
Satya, before we start, would you talk a little bit about your background? You are now a CEO of Open Source Vision Foundation.
yeah.
And
So
also you have Ph.D. from UC San Diego.
yeah.
And you have a very successful company. And you're one of the authorities in computer vision and artificial intelligence and deep learning. So if you could just say a few words about what makes you a very special guest tonight to us, because we're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Yeah, so a little bit about my background. I'm currently the CEO of OpenCV.org, as well as the for-profit arm of OpenCV, which is OpenCV AI. And before this, I did my PhD in 2006 from University of California, San Diego. And then I started my own company with Professor David Kriegman, and I was the CTO of the company and a co-founder. The company, we did pretty well for some time. And then as it happens with a lot of companies, we floundered and we did not do as well. I like to say, people who think that who think that all these things, entrepreneurship is easy. I like to tell them that I made $0 million from my last company, even though at one point it looked very successful, but in the end it did not pan out. But then I started my own consulting business. I decided that I'm not going to focus on VC backed startups. I'm going to have my own startup. And once I decided that, I started with consulting. Big Vision LLC is the consulting company that I run. And I also run a popular blog called Learn OpenCV. So I was a few years into that when Gary Bradsky, who is founder of OpenCV, he contacted me asking if I would be willing to be the CEO of OpenCV. And at that time, it did not make a lot of sense for me because I did not even know how to run an open source foundation. So I decided that, I turned down the offer because I did not have enough experience. But then things changed a couple of years. 1 year after that, I started thinking that OpenCV could be much bigger than just the library. And so we decided that, okay, let's give it a shot, that we will grow OpenCV beyond the library. And this is what the talk is about. We will go over the journey of OpenCV. So that's my background. Now, I'm the CEO of my company, Big Vision LLC, which is a consulting company, as well as OpenCV and OpenCV.ai. So it's a lot of work, but it's very, very exciting as well to grow this community. And I'm also the primary author of a popular blog called learnopencv.com. Okay. So I can start the presentation now if everybody's okay with that.
Sounds great.
All right. So as we know that, OpenCV has been around for 20 years. And this is a library that has been, it grew out of Intel. Um, So it grew out of Intel. The first public release was back in the year 2000, and it has a very important history. It grew, after the first release. This was the first library that people could actually use, and it almost made it. It was a, democratization process for computer vision. Earlier, a few labs had the monopoly on computer vision, and people who were in that lab, they could write good papers, and people who were not in that lab, they would not be able to write good papers. But with OpenCV, everybody got the same opportunity, the same start. So that was a big deal. And in 2005, when we had the first, not the first DARPA challenge, the DARPA challenge where the first vehicle, autonomous vehicle, completed the challenge, which was Stanley, OpenCV was the one, OpenCV was powering the computer vision part of it. And Gary was leading the camera team. So we are literally part of history because OpenCV was part of Stanley, which is in the Smithsonian Museum right now. And then gradually, OpenCV has been releasing new versions of the library every couple of years or so. And we released OpenCV 2.0 in 2009, 3.0 in 2015, which also included the transparent API. And 2016 was big because the DNN module came into being. That's when we decided that OpenCV is not going to be in the training of deep neural networks. We will focus on how to make inference fast for computer vision models. And back in 2018, we released OpenCV 4.0. The big part of it was it has C++11 compatibility. And in 2020 and 21, we are focusing on releasing the next version, 5 of the library. And with OpenCV 5, the main things that we are focusing on is acceleration in various other platforms like ARM, etc. So that's something we will keep seeing as we grow the library forward. So now let's learn about the OpenCV ecosystem. As I had mentioned that we have grown beyond the library. It is still our flagship library, and it is still the core of what we do at OpenCV Foundation. But OpenCV has grown beyond the library. For example, if you look at the various things we have added in the last 1 year, we can start seeing how the library is growing, how OpenCV Foundation is growing beyond the library. So we have the library, but we also have OpenCV courses, which is a collection of 3 courses right now. It is, in my opinion, one of the best collection of courses in computer vision. And the first course is Computer Vision 1, which is for OpenCV related. The second one is Deep Learning, Computer Vision 2, which is for applications. And the final one is Deep Learning with PyTorch. Now, if you look at the third course, it has nothing to do with OpenCV. And that is something I want to reiterate again and again, that we are gradually growing beyond the library. And even if PyTorch has nothing to do with OpenCV library, we are embracing the platforms, the frameworks that are relevant for computer vision, because we want to grow beyond the library. We want to get the community, the computer vision community. We want to serve the computer vision community in general. And then we will also talk about OpenCV hardware, OpenCV AI Kit, which was recently released with the help of a Kickstarter campaign. I will talk about the marketplace, the community we are building, and the consulting services that we are also building through the OpenCV, OpenCV uh, for-profit arm, which is OpenCV.ai. Are you able to see my screen, or is this sidebar coming visible to you guys? Can I actually decrease? Okay, this is much better.
So, we can see you, Satya. We can see you, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I've actually turned it away.
Yeah, and since you're the host, is it possible to disable when people join the sound? Because I know I'm no longer host.
Okay.
Brad
I think if I wear these and just use this for 1 second. Sorry about this. Are you able to hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. Now I think those voices will not be visible. So, okay, so the OpenCV library, it's huge. People don't realize how big it is. On GitHub, we have 45,000 stars. We get about 1 to 2 million downloads per week. So think about the scope of it, 1 to 2 million downloads per week. And we didn't even know about, that this was how big it was until recently when I started digging into how big it is through pip. So pip gives you stats about the library, and we noticed that about a half million to 1 million downloads we received through pip alone. And we just doubled the number for C++. And that's where we came with this number that maybe 1 to 2 million people are downloading OpenCV every week. And there is some data from Embedded Vision Summit, which says that OpenCV is the library of choice for 89% of embedded vision engineers. So deep learning is huge, but it still has not penetrated many low power devices where OpenCV still dominates. And even when people use deep learning, a lot of people have started using OpenCV's DNN module for inference. Now, we also have more than 2,500 different algorithms in OpenCV. And that's something, again, people don't realize how big and how massive the library is. Most of the people these days focus on deep learning, which actually is very effective for a very large collection of problems. But then there are traditional computer vision problems. And for that, OpenCV is the default library of choice. So now, one of the things that people do not know is how is OpenCV funded? So OpenCV is funded through a few of its partnerships. The first one is OpenCV Gold Sponsorship Programs. There are 3 companies in this list. The first one is Intel. It is the partner of, where it all started, OpenCV started. But it also provides about 4 or 5 engineers who work full-time on OpenCV, and that forms the core team. There are other engineers from Experience.ai from OpenCV China who also form the core team. But Intel has been great in supporting the library. We also get interns because of Google Summer of Code. And that is why Google is also part of our gold sponsor. And finally, Microsoft started supporting us through its Azure program. Microsoft Azure provides free 100 hours of GPU time for students in our courses. And they are also going to do the same thing for people who bought OpenCV AI Kit, which I will talk to you in a bit. So these large companies provide us funding to keep the library going. And in the past, we have also received funding from companies like NVIDIA. And that's the main way we fund ourselves. But since last year, we started exploring other options. How can we grow beyond just donations so that we can get some funding into the library? And that brings us to OpenCV hardware partnership. So OpenCV hardware partnership is basically a program that is designed for companies who want to get their hardware supported through the OpenCV team. So the idea is that they would provide us with some money so that we can hire engineers to support their hardware. Once we test everything compiles on their hardware, we will also continuously test new versions of OpenCV as it comes out for the company. So that's the hardware partnership. It is not for small companies. It's usually for companies like Intel, NVIDIA, etc. So, but companies who are building FPGAs, CPUs, GPUs, VPUs, all of these can actually get help from OpenCV hardware partnership. The second program we came up with is OpenCV Development Partnership. There are two companies right now in this partnership called, they are OpenCV, Open AI Labs and Orbec. Both of these companies are out of China. And what they do is they provide donation to OpenCV Foundation, but they also provide manpower. So some of their engineers work with the OpenCV team to add new functionality to the library. And we choose these partners based on something that is useful to us as well as the library, as well as the company who is contributing. For example, OpenAI Labs, they have contributed acceleration for ARM, and they want this acceleration in the library. So we both benefit. OpenCV benefits as well as they benefit. Orbec, on the other hand, they want to add 3D camera support to OpenCV, which is great for our community as well as for them. And these companies, when they contribute, anything they contribute goes to the open source part of OpenCV. So it's a great program for companies who want to accelerate their features. They can support us as well as get the features in OpenCV. So those were the things that, until now we have focused on, but now we are also adding other things like OpenCV courses, which also funds the OpenCV library and the function of the foundation. And as I had mentioned before, we have 3 courses right now. The OpenCV Introduction. Second one is Computer Vision 1, which is the introductory course in Computer Vision. Computer Vision 2, which is a course for applications. We don't go into the theory a lot. In the second course, we are focused on the application. The kinds of applications are very hands-on, where we tell you how to build OpenCV library and create a web application out of it. So things like that, which is, you don't usually get these functionalities easily. And the last course is deep learning with PyTorch, where we'll teach deep learning for computer vision in PyTorch. And as I had mentioned before, that we do not care if what we are producing is related to the OpenCV library. We want to serve the computer vision community in general. And that's why we have deep learning with PyTorch. Another course, deep learning with TensorFlow, will also be coming soon. So we will support all frameworks, and our goal is to support the computer vision community. After that, we also did a Kickstarter campaign for a hardware product. And this is something that was close to my heart. OpenCV is, there is a huge adoption in the embedded vision community. About 89% of the engineers use OpenCV as their primary software development tool. And so we wanted to do something very unique for the community. We wanted to bring this community together. And we've been thinking about a hardware, but it is very difficult to pull of a hardware. It's very expensive to develop. So we partnered with a company called Luxonis. And the first time I actually talked to the company, I was, they were not sure, how we can work together. They had just launched a crowd supply campaign. And when I saw that campaign, I really liked the hardware, the specification of the hardware, and also how fast, how optimized it was. And they launched the crowd supply campaign. I initially thought that this is going to be $1 million campaign. Unfortunately, that crowd supply campaign only produced about $35,000 for them. So I reached out to the founder and said that let's work together on this application, on this hardware platform, and together we can build something really good. We can do a Kickstarter campaign which will raise $1 million, and it would be awesome. It will be an OpenCV branded hardware. And I was not 100% sure, whether they would be, they completely bought the idea. They wanted to work with us, but I did not know whether the team actually thought that we would be able to raise $1 million. So the next time I talked to them, I raised it. I said that we are going to raise $1.2 million. That's our goal. And the thought was that when you say something like $1 million, people don't believe you. When you say $1.2 million, then people start thinking that, oh, maybe, that's a crazy idea, $1.2 million, but maybe $1 million would be possible. And that is why I set that target. And turns out that it was a huge success. OpenCV AI Kit ended up raising $1.35 million, and we have about 6,500 backers. This is the biggest Kickstarter campaign ever for a smart camera. The next big one was Occipital. They had raised $1.29 million. So this was a really awesome campaign. And you can see that we had reduced the price of these cameras quite a bit. And the reason was that we wanted to build the community. Our goal was not to make an instant profit. We want to build a community around this hardware initiative. And we can see that, 6,500, it's quite a substantial community. And during this Kickstarter campaign, we launched two different products. One was called OpenCV AI Kit 1. It is a single camera system, and it can do neural inference in real time. The second version is OpenCV AI Kit with depth, which is OAK-D. And if you look at this camera, you can see that there is an RGB camera, but it also has a stereo pair. So that's for stereo vision. It works like our eyes. It can not only say that there is a chair 2 feet, there is a chair in front of us, but it can also say that there is a chair 2 feet in front of us. So that is OAK-D. The way to think about OAK-1 is that it is a 4K camera combined with a neural compute stick, something like an AI processor. You can think about, NCS, neural compute stick by Intel. You combine a 4K camera with it, this is what you get. But the form factor is really nice, and it is also much less expensive than either of these things. OAK-D, on the other hand, is a 4K camera plus a depth camera plus a neural compute stick. And the price, the retail price would be $300, but in the Kickstarter campaign, we let it go for $150, $149, which is very close to what our costs were for this device at that time. So now, if you look at what this camera is capable of doing, this is an example. You can see that it is doing depth estimate. But if you look very closely, it's also determining that this is a person. And that bounding box is created using the RGB camera. And this image is coming from combining the depth cameras. So basically, it does two different things in real time on the same device. But not only object detection, you can pretty much run um, uh, any kind of neural network on it. Anything that is supported by OpenVINO will run it on it. So you can do segmentation, you can do object detection, image classification, anything you want to do. As long as OpenVINO supports it, we support it too. And the interesting thing about this is that if you actually take, say, a Raspberry Pi, add a neural compute stick to it, and then add a camera to it, uh, we are actually 4 times faster than that configuration. The reason is that all the processing is being done on our hardware. It never hits the host. From the camera, we directly go into the Myriad X chip, which is inside the device, and do the processing. But if you are using a neural compute stick, a USB neural compute stick, the camera actually gets a frame to your host computer and then transfers it to the neural compute stick, which makes the whole thing extremely slow. But we don't do any of that. We go directly from the camera frame to the Myriad X chip and do the inference right there. Whatever neural network has been loaded onto the device, it gets executed. So not only that, we actually put a lot of effort into creating this as a seamless, very easy to use experience, and things should just work out of the box. If you look at most hardware devices right now, you spend half a day just configuring the device to work on your computer. But this one, when I plugged in, it took me about 30 seconds. And even if your computer doesn't have all the libraries loaded, it will take you about a minute or two to get everything running. And once you get this thing running, there is a demo program which you can just run object detection right there. So the goal is to build a community even of people who may not even understand what edge AI is, what are the difficulties, etc. You get this camera onto their in their hands and educate them in the process. You know how to use a spatial AI camera like this, which can do depth as well as neural inference. And that's what our goal is, not just to cater to a very specialized community, but to cater to the masses who want to be part of this AI revolution, but do not have the necessary background. And that is why, we have packed this device with a lot of capability. There is a lot of demo code that simply works out of the box. And these are the various things you can do: object localization, tracking, object detection, and MyriadX can also do video encoding. That is why you can use this device connected to a Raspberry Pi and record 4K video as well. And things like April tag, they come bundled in with our software suite. Warping, dewarping comes bundled in. So a lot of value has been packed into the software layer as well. And people who are not very, very familiar with writing Python code and building a pipeline for this, we have actually created a visual pipeline builder for it. And this allows you to do chain different neural networks. So say you want to do facial landmark detection. First, you want to load a face detector, which runs on the face, and then it does facial landmark detection, and then it does something else. So suppose you have 3 different neural networks, you can use this visual pipeline builder to load these various things using just, drag and drop kind of approach. And you can build this whole pipeline and load it onto the device, and you go. You don't need to code everything if you don't want to. For people who want to write specialized code, that's open too. And this thing will support MicroPython. So a very good interface for developers at different levels. If you are, not so proficient in programming, you can still use it to build products. There are many example use cases, and we actually did an spatial AI competition, which was sponsored by Intel. We did this competition right before the Kickstarter campaign for Oak. And there were several very interesting applications, some things which we had not even thought about. And you can go to this link to see the various competition entries. About 235 people had submitted their entries, and we were thinking that maybe 50 people will participate. So it was pretty overwhelming. And we had decided that we are going to give 15 OpenCV AI Kit with depth units to people, but we just ended up sending 32 of them. And now the competition is in second phase. Out of those 32 people, we are actually going to select 3 people, the best entries for the final prizes. And that is going to happen by the end of November, early December. So some sample use cases are visual assistants. A huge number of people who submitted out of the 235 people who submitted proposals, about 50 or 60 of them were for visual assistance devices. And there's a great story about this guy who was shot in the head back in 2003. He lost his vision because of that. And he also participated in this competition, and he won one of the prizes. And he's creating a visual assistance device using our camera. He was using a sonar device earlier, but he replaced the sonar, which was very heavy, with our Oak camera. So we are very excited to see where he takes that solution to. There is also, things like precision agriculture, where you can see in this example, we are not using depth, but just the Oak camera, Oak 1, is being used to identify whether there is weed or actual carrot in this example. There is another strawberry picker. These are actual examples that people have sent us who have access to this board. They are building things like this strawberry picking applications. Some are detecting lanes for precision agriculture, etc. So very exciting stuff. In health and safety, a lot of people are building visual, things like mask, no mask kind of applications, but also social distancing applications, because this thing has depth built in. Now, until now, the things that I have talked about are related to OpenCV.org. So now I want to talk a little bit about OpenCV AI, which is the for-profit arm of OpenCV.org. Now, in the nonprofit side, we will continue the development of the library, the membership programs. We will continue running through the nonprofit, the courses, and also the community forum. That will be done through the nonprofit organization. But we have some really exciting stuff on the for-profit arm as well. First of all, companies who need help with computer vision consulting, they can come to us. And we have very deep expertise in optimizing these neural network models for very small devices. Like we have worked with FPGAs. Some of our models are in kilobytes, about 600 kilobytes for a person detector and tracker. So there's a lot of expertise that we have in the consulting side, which could be very interesting for companies who are looking for help. We are also building an AI model marketplace. This is something I'll talk in the next few slides. And we are also building APIs for computer vision products and services. And our goal, through OpenCV.org and OpenCV.ai is to build a very large community, a community of 1 million people by the end of 2021. It's a big task, but not impossible. So through OpenCV.ai, the consulting services, as I had mentioned, we have very deep expertise in traditional computer vision techniques, but we also have very deep experience with deep learning based techniques, especially with optimizing models for specific tasks. If you want to get speed versus accuracy, size, etc. So we have a very good experience there. And we have deep expertise in deploying these models onto edge devices also, CPUs, GPUs, VPUs, and FPGA as well. So if you or your company needs some help, please reach out to us. I'll leave an email address after this talk. We also started a podcast through OpenCV.ai. It is called AI for Entrepreneurs. It is also available on YouTube, but you can go and check it out on Apple Podcast, on other, SoundCloud, wherever podcasts are available. We are there. We just have 3 episodes, but this is something we just started. And we'll be interviewing a lot of luminaries in computer vision also as part of this series, this podcast series. We want to reach out to the community. So wherever people are, we are gradually going to them. Hardware, so we are also creating a hardware store where obviously we have the hardware OpenCV AI Kit, but in addition to the hardware, we are also going to produce new hardware. We are also going to have a hardware store where people can put their hardware, and we will have reviews about what this hardware is useful for. And those kinds of some very nice community features would be part of the hardware store. But there will be other series of hardwares which will be related to OpenCV, in addition to OpenCV AI Kit. So for example, you can imagine that we can have a Jetson-based hardware which comes loaded with all the necessary libraries optimized for that kit, so that people have this very easy experience when using this hardware kit. The goal is, right now, if you buy, let's say, a Jetson Nano, then there is some amount of setup. You need to learn a little bit, but somebody who's a beginner cannot get started immediately. Our goal would be that if you buy a Jetson Nano from us, it will come loaded with all the necessary tools you need to make it run in an optimized way. Not only that, this hardware platform will also have tutorials and almost like a crash course, a mini crash course that will come bundled with the hardware, so that it will be very easy for people to get started with that particular hardware. And we are not really married to one company. It could be Intel hardware, it could be NVIDIA hardware, and in some cases, it could be even VPUs from other companies. One very exciting idea that we are working on, and it is almost ready, is a marketplace for sharing AI models. And just imagine if you want to try out a new model right now, you have to download a GitHub repo and make it work. A lot of times it may work fine, but then if you want to compare different models, then it's just a hassle. So what our marketplace will do is allow people to submit their models. We will wrap these models as an API so that other people can try out the models using this API. We will also provide benchmarks for every model, and we will give guidance to people on which model is appropriate for which task. Like if you're using GoogleNet, maybe use it on the server. But if you want something on a mobile device, then use something like MobileNet. So that kind of guidance where we provide accuracy benchmarks, speed benchmarks, memory footprint, etc., that will be part of this marketplace. The interesting thing is that people will also be able to charge for their models. If they want to give it for free, that's fine, but they can also charge for their models. And we are literally going with for the long tail. If you look at companies like Amazon and others, they are going after common tasks, right? Object detection, people counting, those kinds of things, which is great. But there is also, smaller communities where people care about very specific problems. And maybe there is a market for only 1,000 people for a particular model, and Google and Facebook and Amazon, they won't care about those kinds of small niches. And for them, we will provide this marketplace so that they can reach out to their small communities. Even if it is 1,000 people, we don't care. We want to provide them this opportunity to, share and even a profit from selling their models. So that's coming hopefully by the end of this year or early next year, OpenCV AI model marketplace. So the roadmap for 2020 and 2021, we are going to grow OpenCV AI. And part of the reason is that some of this money gets channeled back into the organization. It supports the library, etc. We are celebrating the 20th anniversary of OpenCV. If you want to see what we have in place, you should go check out opencv.org/anniversary. And you will see, you will get a very good history of OpenCV, where you can see people, Dr. Gary Bradsky talking about the library, Vladlen Coulton talking about the development of the library. In the next, so we are having a video series where these luminaries in the field are talking how OpenCV changed and how the field has evolved. We will also soon have a video with Dr. Andrew Ng, Jitendra Mallick, and Bill Freeman, etc. So go check it out. It's really fascinating. I did not know a lot of things about the library myself, and when I heard these interviews, it illuminated me literally. So next, we will go over these membership programs, partnership programs, courseware. We are also having a Chinese version of the course that is being prepared by OpenCV China. And we will invest heavily in workshops and tutorials. Some of them would be free and some of them would be paid, because we really want the library to stand on its own, where even if we don't get any help from large companies, we should be able to sustain ourselves. That's our goal. And very soon we are also going to do, we already did a competition, OpenCV Spatial AI competition, which was sponsored by Intel, but we are going to do many of these competitions at very large scale. Some of these companies are very interested in doing AI for good, and that's also our mission. So we are partnering with large companies to have these competitions. Next, OpenCV 5 will be released in late this year or 2021. And we, as part of that, we are going to have better support for ARM, GPU, FPGAs, Movidius, etc. We are also planning to have build bots at different locations. Right now, there is we only have one build bot, but we want to have it at different locations, maybe one in Russia, one in China, so that there is diversity there. We are able to get developers from around the world to work on OpenCV, and also have redundancy in our build bots. And we are going after some of these new areas, support for medical community, support for robotics. We started working with Ross. We just started having some conversations with how Ross and OpenCV communities can work together. What can we do for each other? So greater collaboration, more things are coming in that way. That is all I wanted to share today. If you have any questions, I can take questions now.
Are you able to see the chat, Satya? I think we have
1 second.
First question from Julian.
Chat. Where is the chat? Let me actually reduce the size of this so that, and stop sharing. Yeah, now I can see the chat. So if you don't mind, can you read me the questions, because I don't know which one is.
Okay.
Sophia, if you could ask me the question, I can directly answer.
Okay, and so will models be authenticated or protected in some way to prevent plagiarism on marketplace?
Yes. So the question is, will the models be authenticated or protected in some way to prevent plagiarism? Absolutely. That, otherwise it doesn't make sense to have a paid structure. The models would be signed, etc. So people will not be able to take that model and just run it on devices. So it will be protected.
Understood. We have another question from Pradeep. Can we run OpenCV on cell phones in the nearest future?
Actually, you can already run OpenCV on cell phones. There is an Android port. We have also used OpenCV on iOS. So if you go to OpenCV's website, there should be enough information to make it work on phones. It's not, a lot of times things are not always easy, but we use it all the time. We have built applications where we used OpenCV on the phone, both on iOS and Android.
Uh, My question from me, and audience, please ask more questions in chat. Satya is really happy to answer any of your questions that you have. So my question is, Satya, who are the ideal users for OpenCV, both commercial and nonprofit? Whom do you see as ideal demographic?
There are three different demographics, in my opinion. The very first one is the student community. If you have never ever touched anything in AI, OpenCV is the first library you should use to get started. That is, the best library out there for beginners. And you will also learn about traditional computer vision methods. A lot of times, deep learning is great. We use it all the time. 50% of the consulting projects we get is deep learning based. However, it is if that is the only tool in your bag, then most of the projects will fail, because a lot of times you need a combination of traditional computer vision algorithms and deep learning to get a solution together. And if you are missing one, then doing everything using deep learning may not work always. So student community who want to get started in AI, that's one part. There are hobbyists who want to tinker with things. These are not really students. They don't want to get into the theory of everything, but they want to build things. So it is also great for that community. The third one is entrepreneurs who want to build a company, an AI company, and they are looking for, some algorithms which work off the shelf. For them also, OpenCV is great. And finally, serious companies who already have a very big staff, they are trying to build some solution which is, uh, they have to build a low power solution, embedded vision solution. So those kinds of people, for them also OpenCV is great, because like I said, 89% of embedded vision engineers use OpenCV as the primary library.
Great. We have another question from Richard Wardlow. And my apologies if I misspelled anybody's name. Deep apologies. Okay, so let me read the question. So Satya, will you be looking for freelance consultants to hire for helping on the OpenCV.ai consulting work you get?
We may eventually. Right now we have a pretty big staff. We work with consultants already, and if you look at all the people we have access to, it's a staff of about 70 people. So, but these things can grow pretty rapidly, and if we need help, we will definitely reach out. And if you sign up for our newsletter or you follow us on LinkedIn, etc., you will definitely hear about those openings.
Another question from me. What are the big plans for 2021? And another would be, are you in any way affected by pandemic and if there's any response that we at OpenCV could be proud of.
So in 2021, the first question, what are the things coming in 2021? First of all, I think we will get much more organized, especially because of these programs that we have put together. We will be getting more funding, which means that the release cycles will improve, and we will be supporting a lot more platforms also. Right now, the library is super optimized for Intel processors. And that's partly because Intel employees are deeply involved in the library. But we are trying to get other companies to also help support us so that we can have super optimized library components for them as well. So you will see that on ARM processor, we will start doing much better because of our collaboration with OpenAI Labs. And similarly with GPU support got added to the DNN library last year, but we want to do more with NVIDIA as well. So library in general will start getting better, but as I said that beyond the library, we are committed to growing the community. We want to support the community in doing anything related to computer vision, not just the OpenCV library. So one of the things that is coming soon is OpenCV Forum, which is not really OpenCV library forum, but an OpenCV forum where people can come and ask questions about anything related to computer vision. And initially, at least, we will try our best to put engineers whose task, every engineer in the company, if they spend a couple of hours a week answering questions, that is super valuable for the community. So that's coming together. And then we, as I mentioned, that on the hardware front also. We'll also be working a lot with other companies to bring new technologies into the community. For example, we just announced today our partnership with Super Annotate. Now, Super Annotate is a company that does annotation, and this tool is actually this tool is very smart in the sense that it is not just an annotation tool, but it's an annotation tool that learns and gets smarter as you annotate more data, and it helps you annotate much faster. So even though it has nothing to do with OpenCV, we know that these tools are super important for people to build, when they're working with computer vision data. So we will be partnering with companies like Super Annotate to bring the best tools to the market. So the second part of the question was, are we doing anything for the pandemic? I think, resource-wise, we are a bit strapped, but one of the reasons we wanted to do the OpenCV Spatial AI competition is to give people something to work on during the pandemic, right? Something to be excited about during the pandemic. So that's our contribution to keep people busy. We are also producing a lot of free tutorials, both on opencv.org and on my blog, learnopencv.com. We are producing weekly tutorials, and that will continue. A lot of content that people can invest their time in learning from free content. I think the main thing about the pandemic is people are getting depressed because they are at home, and things are in general not very happy these days. So our goal is to, people like us, we are happy when we build things. And if we have a community which is building together, then that's a lot of happiness we can spread around.
Absolutely. Also, you've been very modest, because a remote work and education for underprivileged groups that OpenCV is really heavily involved in. I think we had a tremendous impact to develop remote workforce and also
That's
bring
true.
Education to everyone. So big thanks to you for great leadership for the organization.
Well, there is the whole, it was 20. In fact, I used OpenCV during my grad school. So OpenCV has been around much before I came into the picture, thanks to the developers who have worked tirelessly. and Gary, Vadim, and people like them who have committed, 20 years. They have constantly got funding somehow, or like Vadim, he has constantly worked on making the library high performance. So they are the real heroes, in my opinion. So I'm the late, I'm just showing up.
Well, you're a superhero. And
Thanks.
and we have another question from Michael Riepe. Michael runs a very interesting a meetup in Santa Cruz, so he is a good friend of ours and big supporter. So Michael is asking, how does one add support for new hardware backend to OpenCV? And what is involved? And what kind of training and support is there?
Right. So that's I mean, that's very important question also. So OpenCV, when we write a function, uh, it's in C++ and it will run with a reasonable speed on any hardware. So there is a baseline C++ implementation for any hardware. Now, if you want to specifically write for one particular hardware, then there are, inside the OpenCV library, the code is written in such a way that it searches for the right hardware. For example, if you're using the transparent API, it will automatically figure out, oh, this computer has a GPU. So when I'm running this particular function, there is a GPU implementation of the function, which is faster, and it will automatically select the GPU version. And the transparent API, it's very easy to use. It uses, instead of the mat class, use the umat class, and that is it. So very little code change. And you can also change the code quickly to see if, this umat class is creating any problems, which it usually doesn't. So for each hardware, we have these optimizations. For example, if you want to use OpenCL, then you can write OpenCL kernels that OpenCV can use. And for each hardware, it is slightly different. When we add CUDA support, then it checks for whether CUDA is available or not. And if a function can be replaced with its CUDA variant, then it selects CUDA. So the mechanism is there on which for increasing the performance of the hardware, and the right backend can be selected at runtime or during compile time. There is also like when if you look at our blog post on Learn OpenCV for compiling OpenCV for Raspberry Pi, there is an optimization flag which uses a particular library. And if you turn on that library, it automatically runs fast on Raspberry Pi, if you turn on that support. So there are various ways. One, you could do it using OpenCL if the hardware supports OpenCL, or you could do it at compile time. The library for Raspberry Pi that we use is called Tangine. And if you turn on Tangine optimization, then it automatically uses the performance, high performance parts of Tangine when possible.
Satya, this is great. We have another question from S. Gaswami to everyone.
Yep.
Question is, OpenCV is great for getting functionality. Any thoughts on ways to make it perform?
Yeah, so actually, OpenCV is very high performance library. It was built for performance. That was the main objective of OpenCV. And if it doesn't perform very well, like if you compile it correctly for Intel processors, it is blazingly fast. In fact, we had written a blog post showing how it was 2 to 4 times faster than TensorFlow, PyTorch on Intel processors. So, but I have to agree that it may not be high performance on all hardware platforms. And it has something to do with our funding level. When we do not have funding for those platforms, we are unable to add those functions. But now that we are getting more organized, we are looking for funding through companies who want to support their platforms. Especially in Google Summer of Code last year, we added the GPU support for the DNN module. And now it is as good as TensorFlow, PyTorch, or any CUDA-based library. So on most of the platforms, especially on Intel platforms, it is high performance, and even the C++ version, it is very high performance. But sometimes, maybe on an Android device or something like that, it may not be high performance, and that is basically because of our funding level. Once we get funding, we are talking to companies right now, and once we get funded, we will be able to add those functionalities. And we are getting some, good support. The Raspberry Pi example is because we started working with OpenAI Labs. So things are getting better.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job as a leader of OpenCV. Just have no words to thank you. And we absolutely want you to come back and again speak to the group.
Sure.
And give us updates. Your talk was incredibly interesting. I hope to write a short blog post on that.
Of course.
And
of course.
we can talk more about that offline. And companies, if you want to sponsor us, OpenCV, you would be doing good for the community. We need money to be better performing on other platforms. And if you want us to perform well on your platform, you know where to find us. And we're really looking forward to more educational programs all over the world. Again, we have millions and millions of users right now around the world. The most popular computer vision library. And Satya now pushing hard for educational programs. And I know how much you do in India as well. I know for underrepresented groups of children and young adults that want to get into computer programming. And I know your impact has been tremendous. So if you want to say just a little bit about those programs and the success in India and how many people you helped get into the industry. As we know, in India, climate is very competitive and it's hard for people to get into. So if you want to talk about that, and we could finish.
Yeah, so through our blog posts, especially on learnopencv.com, I started this 5 years back, and we have been producing about one blog post every week, and it's all free code, and it's a good learning resource for anybody who wants to get started. And the computer vision library OpenCV itself is free, and this kind of stuff actually has had a huge impact on people from India, especially because I come from India, and it's very difficult to even spend, say, $200 for a course, right? We have to charge $200 for our course because at some point you have to make some money to support the library and other activities. But you don't have to go the library route, the paid course route. I always say that you should try to extract as much information as possible through our free resources. We have a lot of free resources. We are actually working on a new getting started guide also, which will be a lot of getting started with OpenCV quickly, so that people get value from these free resources. And once you have exhausted all the free resources, then go buy our courses, especially if you're from a country like India. The other thing is, I also say is that go share it with your friends. You buy one course. We cannot give you multiple certificates, but certificate is the last thing you should worry about. In today's economy, what's more important is knowledge. So if 5 of you get together and buy a single course, you can get the benefit of the material. Most of the benefit you will get, there are some certificates you may not get. When you do a project, then only one person gets the credit, etc. But don't worry too much about it. If 10 of you want to buy a course together and use it, just use it. Don't. We will be happy that you use that. We will not be able to provide the certificate, but still, the most important value you get through the course is not the certificate, it's the knowledge. So we encourage you to do that. And the final thing is that, we are building a community. By the end of 2021, we want to reach, even though the community of millions of people, we don't have access to the community. We don't have a forum where all those people get together, etc. So help us build the community. You can go to opencv.org/subscribe, and there you will be able to subscribe to our newsletter. There are some benefits of subscribing to the newsletter, like we give out 5 free courses every month. Sorry, that it's a lottery, so you may actually get a chance to win that lottery. And by the end of 2021, we want to be 1 million people. Actually, we want to be 1.2 million people. So so help us spread the word. We will create a forum very shortly, and join the forum as well. Ask questions, and let's work together on this community building.
Absolutely. Satya, thank you so much for your talk. It was great to see you. It was great to hear all the updates. Again, you have to come back and give us more updates.
Sure.